Imagine a single, just regular rogue employee sitting at a standard issue government desk.
Right, just a mid-level worker.
Exactly. They aren't some mastermind hacker pulling off a complicated cyber heist. They
Right.
don't have military-grade encryption crackers. They are literally just a mid-level government worker who decides one day to quietly hand over the digital keys to a $100 billion federal program.
And the fallout from that is just, I mean, it's wild.
It is. The result of that single decision was a staggering $66 million loss to American taxpayers.
Wow.
Yeah. And the craziest part of the sources we're looking at today is that this $66 million heist, it's just one tiny drop in a massive high-tech ocean of fraud.
It really reframes everything we think we know, honestly. Because,
Yeah.
we tend to think of welfare fraud as this individual crime.
Right, like someone fudging their income.
Yeah, exactly. Someone may be fudging the numbers on an application or hiding a side hustle. But what we are looking at today is a highly coordinated, transnational, organized crime operation systematically targeting the United States' largest domestic food assistance initiative.
It is wild. And before we jump into exactly how international cartels and criminal syndicates are quietly draining our grocery aisles, I want to ask you, the listener, to do us a quick favor. Please like, subscribe, follow, and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive.
It really helps out.
Taking 2 seconds to hit those buttons genuinely helps the show more than you know.
And we have an incredibly dense stack of sources to get through today.
We really do. But first, a quick 10 to 15-second news update.
Oh, right, the OpenAI case.
Yes, in the ongoing Martin Stevens v. OpenAI saga, Stevens has officially filed an S1.
Okay, wow.
For those not deep in the financial jargon, that means he's preparing to open the books and take things public. And even more interestingly, he voluntarily suspended the quiet period.
Wait, really? The mandated gag order?
Yep, that mandated legal gag order before an IPO. He suspended it so he can speak freely. And he confirmed that his infamous dead man's switch is indeed safe, meaning if anything happens to him, his cache of sensitive documents will still automatically release.
It's turning into quite the thriller, honestly.
Absolutely. We will keep tracking that as it develops. But right now, we have a very specific mission for today's deep dive.
Right back to the main event.
We are looking at a massive stack of government reports, Department of Justice press releases, and congressional hearing transcripts to understand the $100 billion a year Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which most of us just know as SNAP, or food stamps.
Specifically, our mission is to map out how this vital safety net is being actively exploited by organized crime.
Yeah.
And we want to unpack the massive, highly controversial federal crackdown that is currently underway to rip those criminal roots out of the system.
And a very important disclaimer before we go a single step further. The source materials we're diving into today contain highly politically charged content.
Very much so.
We are talking about welfare policy, immigration enforcement, federal government overreach. We want to be crystal clear with you, the listener. We are not endorsing any political viewpoints here.
We are not taking sides.
Not at all. And we are not here to judge the morality of these policies.
That is vital to state up front. Our job today is strictly to synthesize the facts found in these government reports and impartially unpack the arguments being made on all sides of this deeply complex issue.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're talking about billions of dollars hemorrhaging from a federal program designed to feed people.
Right.
How is this money actually being stolen on the ground? Paint a picture of the mechanics of this crime for us, because I'm struggling to understand how you steal food stamps at an industrial scale.
Well, to understand the crime, you first have to understand the scale of the target.
Yep.
SNAP is a $100 billion a year program serving roughly 42 million Americans.
That is just a massive number.
It is an enormous, highly liquid pool of funds. And because the benefits are distributed electronically on EBT cards, electronic benefit transfer cards, it has become a prime target for modern digital criminals.
Okay.
A perfect example from a recent DOJ press release outlines the case of the Dumitru brothers, Marion and Catalin.
Oh, I read through that indictment. These are the two Romanian nationals, right?
That's spot on. They are 37 and 39 years old, currently in the U.S. illegally, and they were running a multi-state scheme that perfectly illustrates the modern face of SNAP fraud.
What were they actually doing?
They were part of an identity theft ring utilizing skimming devices.
So they're applying like traditional gas station skimming tactics, but scaling it up to target vulnerable government EBT terminals.
That's exactly the mechanism. They would physically install illegal card skimmers on legitimate point-of-sale terminals at grocery stores, ATMs, fuel pumps.
And people just don't notice.
Well, according to the USDA Inspector General, John Walk, a practiced fraudster can deploy a skimmer over a legitimate card reader in as little as 7 seconds.
Wait, 7 seconds?
Yeah, they just pop it over the real machine, and it looks identical.
So you're in the checkout lane at the grocery store. Maybe you're distracted by your kids. You swipe your card, and you have absolutely no idea your data was just cloned.
None at all. The skimmer captures the EBT card number and the pay-in.
Man.
Then the Dumitru brothers would take that stolen data and clone it onto counterfeit cards that just have, like, blank magnetic strips on the back.
Right.
Once they had the cloned cards, they didn't just go buy dinner. They actually waited for the exact day and time the government loaded the monthly benefits onto the victims' accounts, and then they went on a massive, coordinated spending spree.
And reading the DOJ report, they weren't buying a week's worth of groceries. They were hitting wholesale warehouse clubs.
Industrial quantities. In just 2 specific instances noted by prosecutors, they hit warehouse clubs in Gastonia and Pineville, North Carolina.
How much did they spend?
They bought over $15,600 in goods at the Gastonia store and over $19,000 at the Pineville store.
And the items they targeted really tell the whole story.
Oh, absolutely.
They were buying bulk coffee, candy, energy drinks, and baby formula.
High-value, non-perishable, easily resaleable items.
Exactly. They are effectively laundering stolen taxpayer money through bulk baby formula.
That is the exact business model. They take those bulk goods, resell them for a profit on the black market or to unscrupulous smaller retailers, and pocket the clean cash.
Unbelievable.
All told, the Dumitru theft ring stole over $760,000 from SNAP programs across multiple states.
Did they get caught?
They did. They eventually pleaded guilty to wire fraud and face up to 20 years in federal prison.
Wow.
But the real tragedy is on the ground. Think about a family going to the store. They swipe their card to buy basic groceries for the week, and the terminal just says insufficient funds.
Because the account has been drained from 3 states away.
Exactly.
Which brings up a glaring vulnerability that I really have to push back on.
Okay, let's hear it.
If I lose my bank debit card, the bank usually catches the fraud automatically. But more importantly, my debit card has a microchip. It's encrypted.
Right, the chip.
Why on earth, in an era of secure banking chips, is a $100 billion federal program still relying on 1970s magnetic strip technology? It feels like using a digital screen door to protect a bank vault.
To build on that screen door analogy, let's look at the underlying tech. A microchip on your standard bank card generates a unique, one-time cryptographic code for every single transaction.
Right. It changes every time.
Exactly. Even if a criminal intercepts it, that code is utterly useless a second later. A magnetic strip, on the other hand, is basically a cassette tape playing the exact same track on a continuous loop.
Oh, wow.
Once a skimmer records that track, they can copy it to a blank card and play it back indefinitely.
So the government is essentially handing out the equivalent of cassette tapes to protect billions of dollars.
That's the vulnerability the USDA Inspector General highlighted. Almost all states still load benefits on these outdated magnetic strip cards.
It's crazy.
It's a low-tech security measure, completely outmatched by high-tech criminal syndicates. The federal government hasn't mandated that states adopt modern chip technology for EBT cards, primarily because of the massive logistical cost of replacing tens of millions of cards and upgrading every terminal in the country.
But they are finally starting to investigate it, right?
They are, slowly.
Okay, so the government is losing millions to guys taping plastic skimmers over grocery store card readers. That seems like a solvable hardware issue.
Do you think so?
Upgrade the cards, upgrade the readers. But the source material shows that upgrading the classic doesn't fix the problem when the threat is coming from behind the counter, or even from inside the government itself.
Right, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, the external skimming is almost a distraction from a much darker vector.
How so?
Inspector General Walk's testimony detailed a completely different method of fraud called retailer trafficking. And the Government Accountability Office estimates this is a $5 billion annual industry.
$5 billion. How does retailer trafficking actually work in practice?
It requires a corrupt store owner. Say a SNAP recipient goes into a store, Maybe they desperately need cash to pay their rent or fix their car or cover an electric bill.
Things SNAP legally cannot cover.
Exactly. The store employee swipes their EDT card for, say, $100. But instead of giving them $100 worth of approved food, the employee hands the recipient $50 in cash out of the register.
And the store pockets the remaining $50 as pure, untraceable profit, which is fully reimbursed by the federal government because the system just sees a $100 grocery transaction.
Exactly that. And it gets much more destructive than just someone trying to pay their rent.
Like what?
Let's look at a federal investigation called Operation Mic Drop in Southern California.
Okay.
USDA special agents uncovered a massive scheme where $2 million in SNAP benefits were trafficked out of local markets. Store employees were actively trading SNAP benefits to gang members in exchange for crack cocaine and illegal firearms.
You are kidding me?
No. The San Diego District Attorney noted that this federal food assistance money was directly, literally funding a cycle of gang violence in the community.
That is deeply disturbing. It's taxpayer money subsidizing a black market for weapons.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier an even bigger loophole, the terminal cloning case from the hook of the show with the rogue government employee.
Right. Terminal cloning, sometimes called processor fraud. To legally accept SNAP, a store needs authorization from the USDA's Food and Nutrition Administration, or FNA.
Okay, so they have to get approved.
Right. They are assigned a unique FNA number. Well, a corrupt USDA employee betrayed her oath of office and actually sold legitimate FNA numbers to her co-conspirators.
Wait, she just sold the active ID numbers?
Yep.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because if you possess that official number, you essentially become an authorized grocery store in the eyes of the government's payment processor, right?
Precisely. Those criminals took the stolen FNA numbers and used them to set up unauthorized phantom terminals.
Phantom terminal.
Yeah, they bought regular credit card machines, programmed them with the government IDs, and impersonated authorized retailers. Yeah. The system just assumed they were legitimate corner stores.
And then they just ran charges.
They directed massive amounts of fraudulent SNAP payments straight into their own bank accounts, which were tied to shell LLCs.
Let me guess. By the time anyone flags the bizarre transaction volume for a supposed bodega, the LLC is dissolved and the money is gone.
Exactly. And that single inside job, born from just handing over those FNA numbers, cost taxpayers $66 million.
That is insane. Did she get caught?
The employee eventually got 2 years in federal prison.
I have to point out the absurdity here. If the government has a mandate to authorize and monitor all 250,000 plus SNAP retailers in the country, how are transnational syndicates and rogue employees bypassing these internal controls so easily?
It's a huge question.
It sounds like handing a bank robber the blueprints to the vault, propping the door open and looking the other way.
It highlights a systemic, catastrophic failure in basic identity verification and interagency communication. The Inspector General highlighted another jaw-dropping case from Idaho that proves this point.
What happened there?
A fraudster successfully used the identity of a child who died in 1977 to collect benefits from numerous federal programs, including SNAP, for 25 consecutive years.
Are you serious? 25 years using the identity of someone who passed away in the 1970s.
Decades of fraud.
A simple, automated cross-reference with the Social Security Death Master file should have caught that on day one.
Which perfectly transitions us to the current legal firestorm.
Yeah, let's get into that.
With billions of dollars undeniably hemorrhaging to crime syndicates and fraudsters, the federal government is inevitably bringing down the hammer. And that crackdown is sparking a massive, unprecedented legal showdown with the individual states.
Right, because if you're the federal government and you're the one paying this $100 billion bill every year, you're going to want to know exactly where the money is going and who is approving these applications.
That is the core of the new enforcement push. The administration has made program integrity a centerpiece of its domestic agenda. There is a new White House task force to eliminate fraud, chaired by Vice President J.D. Vance, and a specialized SNAP program integrity data team recently established by USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins.
What's their first move?
Well, it was aggressive. They formally demanded 5 years of raw SNAP applicant data from every single state in the union to run their own advanced fraud analytics.
So they're bypassing the state auditors and running the numbers themselves. What did they find when they finally looked at the raw data?
Well, first off, only 28 states complied with the initial data request.
Only 28.
Yeah, but the results from just those 28 states were staggering. The federal data team identified $3 billion in potential fraud, waste, and abuse.
$3 billion in just over half the country. What were the specific anomalies they found? I imagine they were looking for people living in two places at once, or the deceased identities we just talked about.
The sheer volume of those anomalies is what really shocked investigators. They found nearly 186,000 recipients who appeared to be deceased, according to official Social Security records. They found over 441,000 individuals enrolled using dummy or completely fabricated Social Security numbers.
Her grief.
And they found more than 108,000 cases of people actively collecting full benefits in multiple states at the exact same time.
Dead people, fake Social Security numbers, and massive double dipping across state lines.
Yes.
But you mentioned a minute ago that only 28 states complied. What about the rest?
This is where it elevates to a constitutional and legal battle.
Mm-hmm.
The Department of Justice is now actively suing 4 states, Minnesota, Kentucky, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, for outright refusing to hand over their applicant data to the federal task force.
Let me ask a pointed question on behalf of the listener here, because this seems counterintuitive.
Sure.
If the federal government is footing the entire bill for the benefits, why on earth would state governments actively refuse to hand over the data to stop fraud?
Right.
Are they just trying to hide their own administrative incompetence and high error rates? Or is there a genuine good faith legal concern here about federal overreach and citizen privacy?
It truly depends on who you ask, and the underlying statistics add a lot of fuel to the fire.
Like what?
Take Minnesota, which is one of the states currently being sued by the DOJ. According to the USDA's own data for fiscal year 2025, Minnesota has a SMP error rate of 12.58%.
What's the national average?
The national average is 10.62%. So the DOJ's acting attorney general, Todd Blanche, has publicly called the state's refusal to share data unacceptable and suspicious.
Okay, and what do the states say?
State advocates argue that handing over the private, sensitive data of millions of their poorest citizens violates state privacy laws and sets vulnerable people up for aggressive, politically motivated federal audits.
Which perfectly transitions us into the philosophical heart of the debate found in these hearing transcripts.
Exactly.
Because catching cartels and skimming rings is obviously necessary. No one wants gang members buying illegal guns with food stamps. But the net the federal government is throwing out to catch these criminals might be so heavy that it is strangling the very people the program is meant to help in the first place.
And this is where we need to briefly remind you, the listener, of our neutral stance. We are looking at a highly polarized political battle that recently played out in a tense House subcommittee hearing on SNAP waste.
Let's look at the two sides of that hearing. On one side, you have the enforcement perspective, pushing for aggressive crackdowns and stricter rules. Who was representing that side?
You had expert witnesses like Rachel Gressler from Advancing American Freedom and Dawn Royal, the director of the United Council on Welfare Fraud.
What was their main point?
Their primary argument is that SNAP enrollment is inexplicably high. We currently have 42 million people on SNAP, even during periods of historically low national unemployment.
So they're arguing the program has expanded way beyond its intended purpose as a temporary emergency safety net.
Yes. And a major target of their criticism is something called broad-based categorical eligibility.
What is that exactly?
It's a policy that allows people to automatically qualify for SNAP if they receive other types of welfare assistance, sometimes completely bypassing standard federal income limits.
Why would states do that?
States use it to prevent the welfare cliff. That's the scenario where a family earns $1 extra at a new job and suddenly loses all their food assistance overnight.
Oh, okay.
But enforcement advocates argue this policy just opens the floodgates to abuse. They're demanding an end to broad-based eligibility. They want mandatory photo IDs printed on all EBT cards. And Dawn Royal specifically pointed out that state fraud investigation units have been completely gutted over the past decade due to budget cuts.
Meaning nobody is actually investigating on the ground.
Right. She argues that because of this lack of localized oversight, professional welfare fraudsters are literally operating openly, coaching people on how to falsify their household income and composition to scam the system.
Okay, so they see a system run amok, drained by professional scammers, organized crime, and administrative bloat. What is the counterargument? Who represented the vulnerability perspective at this hearing?
That perspective was forcefully voiced by Gina Platanino, the director of SNAP policy at the Food Research and Action Center. She completely rejects the premise that the program is bloated.
What does she say?
She points out the grim reality that 1 in 8 Americans is currently food insecure. We are seeing the highest rates of hunger since before the pandemic.
And reading her testimony, she makes a strong economic argument for the program as well.
A highly significant one. She argues that SNAN Ray is actually a massive economic driver. For every $1 spent in SNAP benefits, it generates up to $1.80 in economic activity.
Right, because those federal dollars are immediately injected directly into local grocery stores, farmers markets, and regional supply chains.
Exactly.
But how do they address the fraud? How do they look at the $3 billion in dummy Social Security numbers and dead recipients the USDA data team found and justify the current system?
Well, Platanino and other vulnerability advocates strongly support targeted technological fixes. They want secure microchips in EBT cards to stop skimming just as much as anyone else.
Okay, that makes sense.
But they fiercely oppose the broader administrative crackdowns, like the federal government demanding 5 years of raw data or forcing states to implement extreme paperwork re-verification processes. They argue this inevitably leads to a phenomenon known as administrative disenrollment.
Administrative disenrollment. That sounds like bureaucratic jargon for people losing their food simply because they couldn't complete the paperwork.
That is the exact translation. When the government tightens the net and demands more rigorous proof of eligibility requiring updated pay stubs, physical mail verifications, in-person interviews, a lot of legitimate, deeply vulnerable people simply fall through the cracks.
Just because they can't manage the bureaucracy.
Right. They can't get through on the state's jammed phone lines, their mailed paperwork gets lost in processing centers, or the forms are simply too complex for someone struggling with literacy issues or language barriers.
And the sources gave a really devastating statistic on the human cost of this administrative net.
Yeah, it's rough.
Because of recent legislative changes aimed at tightening the program's rules, 3.5 million Americans had their access to food assistance affected. And worse, over 770,000 children lost access to SNAP and are now going without meals.
770,000 kids.
I have to challenge this enforcement approach with a sledgehammer analogy.
Let's hear it.
Is the federal government essentially using a sledgehammer to swat a fly on a glass table? Yes, they might successfully crush the fly, the $3 billion in fraud, but they are shattering the table into a million pieces and leaving 770,000 kids hungry in the process. It feels like collateral damage on a massive scale.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your analogy highlights the core agonizing tension of this entire debate. The government is attempting to solve a 21st century technological organized crime problem by adding 20th century bureaucratic paperwork hurdles for poor families.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. When transnational organized crime syndicates are cloning digital cards in 7 seconds and routing millions through phantom terminals, requiring a single mother working 2 jobs to mail in a physical copy of her photo ID and an extra pay stub isn't going to stop the cartel.
No.
It's just going to stop that mother from getting food for her family.
So, to summarize where we stand, we have a $100 billion vital federal program. We have undeniable, massive, sophisticated fraud draining billions from taxpayers to fund everything from black market baby formula to gang violence.
Yeah.
We have state governments outright refusing to hand over their data to federal task forces, claiming federal overreach and privacy violations. And we have hundreds of thousands of children caught squarely in the crossfire, losing meals due to administrative red tape.
It is a staggering problem of scale, technology, and overlapping jurisdictions.
It really is. And before we wrap up, I want to pivot to a final thought for you, the listener, something that really struck us in the source material, specifically regarding how hard it is to just figure out if someone is playing by the rules in the first place.
This raises an important question, and it comes directly from the California Department of Social Services Non-Citizen Eligibility Guide that we reviewed as part of our stack. When we talk about fraud and improper payments, we often instantly assume malicious criminal intent. But if you actually look at the rules for legal immigrants to receive SNAP, the complexity is absolutely dizzying.
Yeah, walk us through what a legal immigrant actually has to prove to the government just to get a card to buy groceries.
Well, according to the guide, a legal non-citizen doesn't just show their green card and get approved. They often have to navigate a strict 5-year waiting period.
5 years.
Yeah. Or, alternatively, they have to prove to the state that they have 40 qualifying quarters of work history officially recognized by the Social Security Administration.
Okay, that sounds complicated.
And then there's the hurdle of sponsor-to-immigrant deeming.
Sponsor deeming, explain that one clearly because it sounded like a trap when I read it.
It basically is. If a family member sponsored their legal immigration to the U.S., the government automatically counts the sponsor's income as the immigrant's income, often disqualifying them.
Wow. Are there exceptions?
Yes, unless the immigrant qualifies for an indigence exception, meaning they are so destitute they would literally go without food and shelter. But claiming that exception requires the state to formally notify the U.S. Attorney General.
You're kidding.
Nope. And if they happen to be a victim of severe human trafficking or battery, there are entirely separate, incredibly complex legal exemptions they have to successfully prove to caseworkers.
It sounds like you need a law degree and a forensic accountant just to fill out the initial application.
Which is exactly the point. So here is the thought we want to leave you to mull over. If the eligibility rules are this dizzyingly complicated just to figure out if someone is legally allowed to apply,
Right.
how much of that $3 billion in identified fraud and high state error rates
Right.
is actually the Dumitru brothers and transnational cartels? And how much of it is simply terrified applicants and overworked, underfunded state employees drowning in an impossible maze of bureaucratic red tape?
So what does this all mean? Are we dealing with a broken x-ray machine that can't read the data, or is the bone just that fractured? That is a fascinating question and a perfect place to leave it today. I want to thank you, the listener, for taking this deep dive with us. It's a dense, heavy topic, but understanding where our tax dollars go and exactly how they are protected is crucial to being well informed.
It really is.
Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, follow, and turn on notifications so you can join us for the next one. We will see you then.